Welcome back to this educational series where we are going to cover the source based questions for class 12th history CBSE exams. So we know that the date sheets are out, and along with the hard work, we also need to check that how much prepared are we for the exam. So please prepare for your exams section wise. Today we are going to cover the E section of the question paper, which contains source based questions. There will be three source based questions, and each question will be of 4 marks, which makes a total of 12 marks. So, all I want is that all the students who are appearing for class 12th history board exams must get a perfect score of 12 on 12 by doing and cracking these source based questions. And this you can do only when you're thorough with the sources and the ways to do these questions. So I'm going to cover the same for you all here. Let's get started. So, first chapter, Bricks, Beats, and Bones. Here we have the source. So, as advised by me, the first thing you should do is that as soon you come to the source based questions, you must switch on directly to the questions. And this you must do at the time of reading time, which is of 15 minutes. Go through all the questions, like there will be three questions: 1 mark, and 2 marks. Some of the questions may be direct and some of may indirect. Direct questions are those which will have the answer in the source itself. And the indirect questions will be those where you need to have an insight of the chapter. So the first question here is write the drawback of drainage system of Indus Valley civilization. Now, if you come to the source, please underline all the keywords that are coming. And then finally, when you come to the last line, you will get the disadvantage. So disadvantage was that the solid material was not always cleared from the drains. And this is what is written. The answer is being written in my own words. The solid matters settled inside the drainage channel was not always moved away. Second question: was drainage system limited to big cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro only? Indirect. So you will find that it was not limited only to Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, but all the settlements in IVC had drainage system. Last, some interesting features of drainage system of IVC. So this is the direct question, and the answer you can get it from the source itself. So you can see that the drains, every house was connected to the street drains. Main channel, they were made up of bricks set in mortar, and then even you can write down some of the points like the drains were cobbled arched drains, and they were very big in size. So this is how you are going to do it. Moving on to the second source based question. So this source talks about R.E.M. Wheeler, who was the DG of Archaeological Survey of India, and he was the one who excavated Harappa in layers, stratigraphy, right? And he believed that the invasion by Aryans was the prime reason for the decline of IBC. So it's the same thing which is given here. Moving on to the questions. Which civilization is here being referred as non Aryan? So that is your Indus Valley, because Aryan civilization is Vedic. As per this passage, who is referred to as Purandara? So that is Lord Indra. It's a direct answer. Why have Lord Indra here been accused for destruction of Indus Valley civilization? So this is again a direct question where you can see that Aryam Wheeler, he has given the evidence with the help of Rig Veda, the first Veda. And they have mentioned about this case where Indra, the Aryan war god, is called Purandar. That is the destroyer, the fourth destroyer, right? The same is mentioned in this answer also, and it is believed that they were the Aryans who attacked the people of Indus Valley civilization. Coming on to the second chapter, that is the kings, farmers, and towns, where we have read about the Mahajanpads and Magad being the most important and powerful Mahajanpad of that time. So this is an excerpt from the Prayag Prashasti. Prayag, it's Allahabad, which is in Uttar Pradesh. So this Prayag Prashasti, it was inscribed on a pillar. That is the pillar which was constructed by the king, great Ashoka. Coming on to the questions. Which king is being mentioned in this excerpt? So, nowhere it is mentioned. The name of the king is not mentioned. So, this we should know when we are reading our chapters. So, Samudragupta, the Gupta ruler Samudragupta, he has been mentioned. He is addressed in this excerpt. As per this excerpt, why has the king been called Purush? All right, he's known so because he's the cause of good and destruction of bad. And then who is the author? Again, it is indirect, not given in the text directly, but we must know. Hari Sen has written it, and Prashastis were generally written to glorify the rulers. So you can say a perfect combination of direct and indirect questions. So coming on to second source of chapter number 2. So this source talks about Sudarshana Lake, which was constructed on the orders of the founder of Mauryan dynasty, that is your Chandragupta Maurya, and he passed the orders to his governor, that is your Pushyagupta Vaishya. So he got the lake constructed, and this lake was then maintained by the Shak ruler Rudradaman. Coming on to the questions. Who has built the Sudarshan Lake at Girnar? So that was the Mauryan governor, and the name is Pushyagupta Vaishya. How do we get to know about the Sudarshan Lake? So we come to know about it through the rock inscription of Rudradaman and other rulers, which is in Girnar. What type of irrigation was used by farmers during early historic period? Again, this is the indirect question. So mainly Indian farming, like today, always was dependent on monsoons, but yet there were some of the artificial ways of irrigation through wells and tanks, and canals were also constructed. Third source, it talks about Manusmriti, which advises the king that why the boundaries are important, why a king should always build boundaries, forts around his kingdoms. Coming on to the question, why is demarcation of boundaries so emphasized by Manusmriti? As per this passage, what solution is suggested for this problem of demarcation? Do you think this method was followed throughout the India? Give reasons. So we have two direct questions, one and two, and third is indirect. So clearly in this passage, you can see that the reason that why we should build the boundaries, it is for resistance from the neighbors, protection, security. The second question is that what solution is suggested for this problem of demarcation? So king should demarcate the boundary in hidden manner with stones, bones, cow's hair and all that. Then do you think that this method was followed throughout the India? So we know that always, not always the rules are followed. So same way here also, this particular demarcation of boundary as mentioned in Manusmriti was not followed with the same intensity in our country. Right? There were some of the regions and communities where it was not followed. Source number 4. So this tells us about the people who lived in the forest region of Vindhyas. So what was the source of living, the subsistence for these people, and their association with farming? As per the passage, which type of agriculture was practiced by the people of India? So, since they are the tribal people, they practice spade or hoe agriculture. What was the role of village women? So, the main function of village women was to sell the forest fruits and flowers in the neighboring villages. Write a description on Harsha Charitra. Again, indirect question. So, Harsha Charitra, it is the biography of King Harshvardhan, who was the ruler of Kannauj, and it was written down by his court poet Ban Bhatt in Sanskrit. Next is source 5. This describes about the land grants which was done by Prabhavati Gupta, the daughter of Chandragupta. So again, you'll get a combination of direct and indirect question. What was Agrahara? Indirect question. Did women hold lands in ancient India? Give reasons for the answer. This is based on the understanding of the chapter and why the lands were granted. So, what was Agraharat? So, this was basically the land which was given to the Brahmins with the exemption of paying land revenue and other dues to the king. So, that is the land given as charity to the Brahmins. Did women hold lands in ancient India? Usually, they did not. Women did not get the right to inheritance, right? But still, you will find that Prabhavati Gupta, in spite of being a woman, she got land. So that is an exception also. Why the land grants were granted? Definitely it was to show the power and to get the support of the local lords. Source number sixth. So this speaks about Devanpiya Piyadasi. So and this describes about what happened after the Battle of Kaling. Right? So again, few direct and few indirect questions. Who has here been called Devampiya Piyadasi? Indirect. It's not given in the passage anywhere. So you must know, but it was Emperor Ashoka of Mauryan Empire. As per this passage, what has made Devanpiya as a devotee of Dham? So he started practicing Dham because he was completely shattered and disturbed after seeing the violence in the Kaling War. So he repented. He found himself guilty of this war. And he thereafter followed the path of non-violence. Explain the efforts made by Ashoka to promote Dham. So he got the inscriptions installed where he has written about Dham, explaining people what they should do and what not. And he also appointed special officers known as Dham Mahamat to promote about Dham. The chapter number 3, kinship, caste and class. So here comes the first source, that is from your Adi Parvan section of Mahabharat. So this particular passage speaks about the issue of controversy between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, the law of inheritance, and what was the reason for animosity between the cousins. Questions. What was the reason behind jealousy of Dhritarashtra? What does the term patrimony mean? Explain the family relationship during Mahabharata. So, reason for Dhritarashtra jealousy was that they loved the people of Hastinapur, they loved Pandavas over Kauravas, and Kauravas, they were the sons of Dhritarashtra. What does the term patrimony mean? It means inheritance of paternal property. Explain the family relationship during Mahabharat. So this was completely based on patrilineal, which means that the lineage was taken from the father's side. When the lineage is derived from father's side, it is known as patrilineal. And the resources were distributed amongst the sons only, not to the daughter. So this is what we come to know. Next source, it talks about first, fourth, fifth, and sixth form of marriages as given in Manusmriti. So many a times students they get confused between the types of marriages and forms of marriages. Let me tell you, there are four types of marriages: polygamy, polyandry, exogamy, and endogamy. And then we have eight type of marriages. Coming on to the questions. How many types of marriages prescribed in Manusmriti? Just now I told you there were eight of them. As per this passage, which form of marriage was considered illegitimate by Manusmriti? Fifth and sixth. As per Mahabharata, give one example of polygamy and polyandry. Polygamy is when a man marries more than one woman. That means when a man has more than one wife, that is polygamy. And polyandry is when a woman has several husbands. So the examples are marriage of Pandu with Kunti and Madri, and polyandry, the marriage of Draupadi with Pandavas. Third source talks about again the Varn system, the caste system as prevalent in our country. So here we come across Dronacharya and Eklavya. The incident is mentioned that why Dronacharya did not want Eklavya to be his student. So please read this source during the reading time. Then come on to the questions. Why did Drona refuse to teach Eklavya? Because he was not Kshatriya, he belonged to Nishad community. Why did Drone demand right thumb from Eklavya? Because he did not want Eklavya to be the best in archery, as he has already given his words to Arjuna that he will be the best archer in the world. And Eklavya was performing better. So that's why Dronacharya did it. As per Dharmashastra, what was the role of Kshatriya? So, as you can see, again, the answer is not given in the passage. For the same, you need to go through the chapter thoroughly. So, we know it very well that what is the role of the Kshatriya? To justice, administer justice, engage in warfare, security, protection of their kingdoms, to read, study Vedas, and get the sacrifices performed with the help of Brahmins. The fourth source. So this speaks when Pandavas they were asked to leave the kingdom, and here it is Bhim. So this talks about the marriage of Bhim and Hidimba, which is example of exogamy, that is marrying outside the unit. Bhim was a Kshatriya and Hidimba was Rakshasa. Generally, the people who were not Brahmins, who did not follow Brahmanism, they are considered to be Rakshas. So, which type of marriage is being described here? Exogamy, marrying outside the unit. As per this passage, who is referred to as tiger like husband. So, that is Bhim. On what conditions Yudhishthir agreed for marriage of Bhim and Hidimba? Direct answer. So, the condition is mentioned here that Bhim, he would spend the day with Hidimba and he will be coming back at night. Now, this is fifth source which talks about Chandals and it is about Matanga Jataka, a Pali text which speaks about a bodhisattva, right? So it is here mentioned that Matanga, who happened to be a Chandal. So what is mentioned here, right? Coming on to the questions. What does bodhisattva mean? So that means an individual who would become Buddha in next birth. How did Matanga react when he was denied alms by his son? He said, those who are free from vices are worthy of offerings, not those whose identity is based on birth. So Matanga believes that it is the action, not our birth, which decides who we are going to be. So our actions, they speak about us and our identity. Write a description about Chandals of ancient India. Again, this question is indirect, right? Which is not given in the source. So they were considered to be outside. They were not allowed to live in the village and they were considered to be polluted. They have to suffer a life of disgrace and sacrifice. Now, next is your source number six. So this is again based on your caste system, right? Shudras being the lowest one. Come to the questions now. Who is Kanchana mentioned in the passage? Given it is direct disciple of Buddha. As per this passage, what was the reason behind backwardness of Shudra? So that is poverty and uneven distribution of wealth and even inequality in the opportunities. Shudras were devoid of any opportunity to develop. As per Dharma Shastra, describe the life of Shudra. Again, this is indirect. So, Shudra, they were supposed to serve the other three Varnas. They could not study Vedas, engage in warfare, and even couldn't do pastoralism and agriculture. So, this is source number seven. So, this talks about Draupad, who was the king of Panchal, right? So, this is about how Arjuna was victorious and the marriage and all. So, as per this passage, who was selected by Draupadi as a husband? So, it was Arjun. As per this passage, comment on the situation of mothers in ancient India. Now, let us come to the next source. So, the next source tells us about the marriage of Draupadi with all five Pandavas, how it happened, and the role of mother, how important the mother was. So let's come to the question. As per this passage, who was selected by Draupadi as her husband? It's given directly, Arjun. As per this passage, comment on the situation of mothers in ancient India. Mothers were important, but they were rarely influential. Case of Kunti was exception. Now, why it is saying so? Because when Draupadi, along with Arjun, came to Kunti, Kunti, without looking at the back, told Arjun that you should divide whatever you have brought. So it was not a commodity, but it was Draupadi. This made Draupadi to marry all five Pandavas. How did Vyas convince Draupadi for the marriage of Draupadi with Pandavas? So these are the reasons. It's the direct answer. He said that Pandavas are the reincarnation of Indra and Draupadi was wife of Indra in her previous birth. He also argued that in a previous birth, Draupadi had prayed for five husbands from Lord Shiva, and this is what she got in this life in the form of five Pandavas. Now let's come to chapter number 4, Thinkers, Beliefs and Buildings, which talks about Buddhism and Jainism. So in this, the sacrificial tradition, as mentioned in Rig Veda, has been given. Coming on to the questions. Apart from Agni, which deities were mainly mentioned in Rig Veda? So Som, Indra, and Varun. To whom Vedic Sanskrit was taught? Men from priestly families. What were the objectives of performing sacrifices? To get abundant food, wealth, cows, sons, good health, and a long life. So that's an easy passage, and most of the questions here you find they're direct. Source number 2 is taken from Sutpitaka, that is one of the Tripitaka of Buddhism. So this is describing a conversation between King Ajatsattu and the ruler of Magadha. The ruler of Magadha and the Buddha. So this is the complete source. Makhali Ghosala belonged to which heterodox sect? So Ajivik. What was the philosophy of Ajivik? They believe that everything is predetermined and humans can't change everything via any means. Now, describe one similarity and difference between Ajit Keshkambalan and Ajivik. Similarity is that both were against sacrifice and heavy rituals. And difference is that Ajivik lived ascetic life, whereas the members of Ajit Kesham they lived a life of pleasure. So this is the main difference. So this is again an excerpt taken from Sutpitaka. We know that Tripitaka there are three books: Vinay Pitaka, Sutpitaka, and Abhidham Pitaka. So Sutpitaka mainly talks about Buddha and his teachings. So here it's a piece of advice which was given by Buddha to a wealthy householder, Sigala. Questions? Source of this excerpt, Sutpitaka. What did Buddha suggest Sigala about the treatment of servants and employees? So he told that assign work according to strength of employee, supply them with food and wages, share delicacies with them, and grant leaves when needed. As per the except, how should one take care of Samans and Brahmins? So the five ways are by affection, by keeping the house open for them, affection in speech, supplying worldly needs and all. So this is directly, you can see it is being given here. It's given here that how they can do it. Affection in action, speech, mind, keeping the house open, supplying them with all the worldly needs like food, shelter, clothes, whatever we can provide them. Now the fourth source. So this particular source is about what all a bhikkhu is supposed to done. Right? What is he supposed to done? So the questions are, what is the source of this excerpt, Vinay Pitaka? Because Vinay Pitaka is the book which tells us about the rules and regulations to be followed by the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, the monks and the nuns. So it is not given directly, but after we read, we can make it out that here they have mentioned what a bhikkhu is supposed to do. So the rules and regulations of a bhikkhu they are mentioned in Vinay Pitaka. So this is how we can crack first question. Who convinced Buddha to allow entry of women in Sangh? Anand, one of the most favorite follower of Buddha was Anand. So he said that the women should also be allowed in Sangh. And Maha Prajapati Gautami was the first bhikkhuni. How many Pitikas are there in Buddhism? There are three: Vinay Pitika, Abhidham Pitika, and Sutpitika. Now, coming on to chapter number 5 through the eyes of travelers. So this talks about Ibn Battuta, who was known as the Globe Trotter and the writer of the book Rihla. A gracious direction was transmitted that he, Ibn Battuta, should dictate an instructions for use account of the cities which he had seen in his travel and of the interesting events which had clung to his memory. So what all he has experienced, what all he has observed and seen, he was supposed to write it down. Now, which country did Ibn Battuta belong to? He was from Morocco. As per this excerpt, who was appointed by the ruler of Morocco to write dictation of Battuta about his travels? Ibn Juzazi. What is the name of the travelogue written by Ibn Battuta? Rihla. Write down its importance. So it gives a lot of information about medieval India. Right? Rihla. So there, these questions, you'll find that these questions are indirect. You'll not find anything directly from this passage. So dear students, you need to be ready for such tough questions as well, which are not directly given in the source. Source number 2 is from the next traveler, that is your Francois Bernier, who came to India all the way from France to study about Indian economy, political system, and all. So, this is an excerpt from his description of the army's march to Kashmir. So, when he came to India, the Mughals were ruling India. Which country did Francois Bernier belong to? France. So, there are three important travelers of this chapter, that is Ibn Battuta, Francois Bernier. So, you must know about them. In this chapter, in this chapter, there are three important travelers mentioned who came to India during the medieval time: Al Biruni, Ibn Battuta, and Francois Bernier. So you all must go through them. During the reign of which Mughal emperor he came to India? Shah Jahan. Basically, Francois Bernier was the physician to Dara Shah, who was the son of Shah Jahan, Prince Dara Shah. How was Bernier's description different from Al Biruni? While Al Biruni wrote things on the basis of curiosity, Bernier's description was based on comparison between India and Europe. So that's why they were entirely different. So here comes the third traveler, Al Biruni. So what he has written about the Varna system as he saw in India. As per this excerpt, what is the origin of Brahmanama? That is from the Brahman. Let us come to the third source of this chapter, which is based on the accounts of Al Biruni, and we'll read here that what he has written about the Varna system as prevalent in Indian society. So the first question is, as per this excerpt, what is the origin of Brahman? So that is from the head of the nature, Lord Brahma. What was the name used for untouchables in medieval era? They were known as Antaja. As per Al Biruni, how was the life of Vaishya and Shudra? So it's written that there was not much difference between them. Both lived together in the same village. They were also mixed together in houses and lodgings. Now the fourth source, it talks about the accounts of Ibn Battuta, and then he has vividly written about two cities of India, Delhi and Daulatabad. So he has spoken about the Indian bazaars, the population, the opportunities. First question is, how many gates of Delhi are mentioned in this excerpt? 28. Direct. Why the ramparts were built? It was for protecting the city from the invasion. As per this excerpt, write two features of city of Delhi. So there were 28 gates, there were ramparts, they had storehouses for edibles, magazines, ammunitions. Then about the markets also we can write down here. We can also write that this city was so much populous. Now, moving on to the next source, fifth source. So Ibn Battuta, he has described about Daulatabad here. So in Daulatabad, there's a marketplace for male and female singers, which is known as Tarababad. So he has written all about the bazaars. And the first question is, in which state of modern India Daulatabad was located? That is Maharashtra. During the rule of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the capital was transferred from Delhi to Daulatabad. Then Daulatabad was in Maharashtra. What was the name of the marketplace for male and female singers in Daulatabad? Direct, Tarbabad. Compare the bazaar from modern market. Write one similarity and one difference. Similarity, modern marketplaces, they do have religious places, and difference is that modern marketplaces really have such arrangements for entertainment like music and dance. So, in the markets of medieval India, there were even uh, sources of entertainment that was also provided to the people. So next is about the postal system as described by Ibn Battuta. So there were two types of posts. That was a horse post and foot post. And as I have been telling you repeatedly, please read the source during the reading time itself. And then you come to the questions. First, read the questions. How the horse post was stationed in the Delhi. So that was after every 4 miles. As per the except which postal system was quick? Dawa. That is a foot post. It was faster. Apart from the communication of letter, for which other purpose food posts were used and why? So they were used to transport fruits from Khorasan as they were quicker than the horse posts. Direct. All the three questions are direct here. Next is Bernier's description of peasantry in countryside. Francois Bernier has written about the crown ownership, which he did not like. And he warned the kings in France and the bureaucracy in France that you all must be aware of crown ownership as it was during the time of Mughals. How did Indian agriculture is portrayed in this excerpt? So he has written that it is badly cultivated and very backward, crown ownership again. As per this excerpt, how was the life of agricultural laborers? So they were exploited a lot by the landlords. And if they failed to pay the revenue demands, even their kids were enslaved. Describe the intention of Bernier according to this excerpt. Bernier is basically warning the European rulers that if they would move the concept of private property, the state will become impoverished like Mughal India. So, with this, we have come to an end to the first session of source based questions. Soon, I will be coming up with two more parts for this session, and I hope you all are working hard. And please, along with the hard work, keep on checking that how much ready are you for your board exams. So, this is a time to check your preparedness. In which section of the question paper are you strong enough? So prepare your source based questions very nicely because you have a huge scope, 12 marks. And I wish that all the students should get 12 on 12. Thank you so much for watching. Do like, share, and subscribe. Waiting for your valuable feedback. Thank you so much and best of luck for your exams.